All right, everyone see the notes. We have the agenda item. Welcome, everybody. The date is April 26th, 2022, and this is the Cloud Custodian community meeting for today. As always, just a reminder, we do record these meetings and put them on YouTube, and the CNCF Code of Conduct is in effect. So as always, let's be excellent to each other. A bunch of us are in Seattle right now, sprinting for Stafflet where we work. So AJ Jameson, myself, Liz are here along with Tori. And we wanted to keep the schedule of the community meetings going because we have some stuff that we want to cover. And yeah, so we're going to go through the agenda and we're going to go through some of the PRs and stuff that have been active this week. As always, the agenda is open. So if you have anything that you would like for us to discuss in the URL there for the notes, feel free to just add it directly to the notes, and then we will get to it. First two things on the agenda are just some reminders of activities that are coming up. So PyCon is happening, that's this weekend then, right? Yeah, this weekend, and AJ is going to be there and attending. So if you're going to go, click through there and there's the information for attending the event. So hope to see you there, and AJ will buy you dinner probably. Next, if you're going to go to KubeCon, we whipped up a quick SurveyMonkey link. If you could answer it, we just want to know who's going to go at KubeCon so we can try to organize a dinner or a get-together or something like that. So for that, we just need your email address. So if you're going to that and you want to check us out at KubeCon, then we will do that. All right. Does anybody else have any open agenda items before we get to like kind of the working items of PRs and issues and things like that? Okay, first things first, Kapil got COVID on his way here to the sprint. So I know that we've had some issues that we want to unblock as far as PR reviews and things like that. We're not going to be able to actively work with him for a while. He's in his room, he's feeling fine, he's okay. But he's just not in any capacity to work probably for the next 2 weeks. He might be stuck here in Seattle, so he's not even going to be able to travel home. So apologies for that. I know we've had a lot of work items that have been depending on Kapil's review, and we just made everything just got a little bit harder for us. So apologies for that if you've been waiting on that work, but we're going to try to work through it because, I mean, what can we do, right? Anybody got any concerns or comments or anything of that nature? He sends his regards. All right, we have a few items here, and Darren, I know about 7029. I've already got that on the top of the list. I want to make sure that we don't leave that hanging. I know that's been frustrating for you, so I apologize for that. So yeah, who wants to go first? Here, we got it. You had some items from, I'm looking at AJ. Yeah. AJ had some items from last meeting that he might want to cover.
We did get a couple merged in there. And Darren, I know you were working on your team was working on that config poll rule mode. We did get that one merged in. You may have seen Kapil's comments on that one. I have to find the. So I was helping, trying to add some documentation, and the documentation was not clear enough. So apologies for that. I took your perfectly fine PR and added some mud to it. So we'll try to get a follow up to clear that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So you told me about this one. Can you clarify a little bit?
That one, yeah.
We are updating the documentation to match the PR, not the other way around.
Yeah, and it's in there. I think it's. I'll post the one I'm looking at here. Yeah. It's. Is this the one? Make sure.
For the video, to my right.
Yes. Actually, no, that's the wrong one. I'll find. But
do you have the number?
Yes, yeah, that's what I gave you the wrong one. It's the documentation. The reason that we would want this mode was when we want a related resource to trigger a new rule evaluation. And I tried to add, the logic was all fine in the PR, so trying to help for when people are browsing why they would need this thing in the first place. I think when I added the docs, it suggested that you would need it if you were filtering on a related resource, and that's just not it's not true. And it was a good call out from Kapil. So I just need to make another doc update. The functionality's there. I think it's useful as is, but just I mean, as always, making the docs a little bit clearer is nice.
Got you. All right, so that's 7194 and 71. What's
5695 is me pasting a thing that is not the right thing.
Okay, so let's ignore that one, and I'll make sure that's correct in the notes.
Yes.
Wait, speaking of documentation, George, have we blocked the PR that we're waiting on for? Because I know we're still having difficulty with the deployment pipeline for documentation, right?
Yeah, did we ever fix the talks thing?
The talks thing. We have
we moved to poetry, but we still say we use the talks. Is that
that is funny that you mentioned that one, because I do have a PR. So I wanted to keep it separate from the new release.
Okay.
Because I know Sunny, thanks to Sunny, he's got a lot of work on some dependency updates for our next release.
Gotcha.
But
we'll get to those. We should talk about.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. But I do have a draft PR open. I will pop that here. And this is a pretty big, it ends up being a pretty big change only because of a lot of ripple effects. And that's including, and it ties into what you're talking about, George, with talks, because we're going to specify all of the idea here, the proposal. Yeah, is to specify all of our sub-projects, like the tools, mailer.
Can you share the PR? You're the one sharing the screen, right?
Is it
7216.
Okay, cool.
Just click on one and then change the number to that'd be beautiful.
Cool. So yeah, the idea is to have all of those projects as dev dependencies. So when we run a poetry install, it's going to do editable installs of all those sub-projects. And that way we're looking at the whole, we're resolving the dependency tree once all at the top level, hitting out into all those sub-projects. We have our base, we end up with a pretty gigantic poetry lock file. But what was happening before, and Sunny, I know you ran into this, I'm sure other folks who have been trying to do a make install poetry have run into this weird sort of thing where it progresses through multiple installations and it's kind of toggling between installing and uninstalling packages. And you're wondering what the heck is it doing? And it's just because there's the specific requirements vary by project. And so we've got like multiple dependency resolution dependency trees per sub-project, and we're kind of having them compete at install time, and it's just kind of a pain for people who want to contribute. And it's scary enough that I now left the meeting. But I
don't like this.
Yeah, I'm helping. But yeah, so the idea here is to pull everything back, but making that change so that everything is part of our root dependency tree. That affects a lot of things. So there's a lot of kind of trickle down changes in here. And one of them, the big coming full circle, one of those is updating the dev install docs to say that we're not going to use talks anymore because we're pulling away from that and we're just doing this. We're leaning into, I mean, make install poetry ends up being, it was a convenient single command to wrap multiple poetry installs. Right. With this change, it just becomes like an alias for poetry install, basically, and we just keep it around for compatibility. But there's, a bunch of.
So then correct me if I'm wrong, so then this would also unlock the problem we're having with getting, because as I understand it, like right now, like the source for documentation, like the code, you can update it, but it's not actually being rendered, right? Because that deployment pipeline.
I think that is a related issue. I don't know.
We need this before we can fix it.
We are looking right now. The doc builds happen through some other process that I think Kapil is the only one who has access to.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're trying to get off of that, but having a more consistent, predictable developer install gives us a single main virtual environment that we can also use to reliably build docs. We were having some issues before where, depending on the order that your package is installed, your environment might not be able to build the docs properly. Right. I knew you ran into some weird issues, right?
Yeah. And then I wasn't able to build. So will will I be using Tox at all or just pure
I
poetry?
don't think we're going to use. I don't think we're going to need Tox at all because Tox. There were a couple of things that Tox was helping us. Tox was helping us with, and one of them was that matrix of being able to go across different Python environments, and that we're using the GitHub Actions piece to do that sort of. And then when you're doing your local development, you're typically only working against one environment. You're just, I mean, you can target multiple if you want, but just the poetry is enough.
Was that a question from chat? I don't think so. No, that was someone else. I should shut Slack off one second.
Yeah, but so this one, if anyone's interested in this sort of thing or wants to try it, feel free to check out. This is I'm keeping this as a draft right now because it is like at one level it looks like a really minor change, and then it's like you pull the thread and the whole sweater falls apart. So
just to give people a quick summary of the background here is Custodian's pretty old, and a lot of the doc building processes were set up a long time ago using instances and stuff. And it's like, why aren't we just using GitHub Actions to build stuff? And what I ideally would like to get to is when you do a PR, we'll do like a nice Netlify preview and all that kind of good stuff. That's where I envision us going, so that we could start to rev on the docs and make them pretty and do all that good stuff.
Well, and the major problem is like anything that's updated to the documentation is not actually being rendered right now, right?
Yeah, and then it was broken and we didn't know, so I was landing stuff in Git and was like, I am updating the docs, and then I was looking it up the other day and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, where did all my changes go?
Yeah.
And then that's when we found that it was broken, and that's when AJ started digging and pulling on the thread, and then then the sweater started to fall apart, so we needed a new sweater.
But I think part of this, and I'm not trying to package too many documentation updates into this, but part of it is very related. I mean, we've got we were referencing dead snakes, which I know has come up in previous.
I don't like that.
And we don't really need to. It's not. You don't need to have
third-party PPAs replacing your system Python. I'm not a fan either.
Yeah, we didn't really need that. So we're trying to pull out some of that and then just make sure that we have references to Python 3.6, which is end of life, and as of some point fairly recently, we don't support that. I think we implicitly said we run on supported Python releases, but we also had a reference to Python 3.6, so it's just a little bit unclear. So
we'll tighten that up.
Trying to clear things up.
Any questions on docs? All right. Sunny, do you have a update on what you've been working on? I know we're looking at trying to release, and then stuff happened.
Yeah. So AJ mentioned it before, but there is a release engineering PR. The number. That's just in preparation for the upcoming 9.16 release. That is PR number. Oh, it's not in the Google Doc. That can be.
Usually the PRs on the notes are the ones that are incoming over the past.
Right, they're the most recent ones. Yeah, it's 7203. I'll post it in the chat here. Yeah, so that's ready for it's been approved. Should be ready to go. There are two issues with this. One, the Jinja project released a minor version upgrade that included a lot of breaking changes. I know that was a discussion we had last time. Their stance on it was they don't use Semver and don't recommend anyone use Semver. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not what like the rest of the industry does, so that's kind of annoying, but work through that issue. And then the other issue was exactly what AJ was talking about, how we install everything through Poetry kind of stepwise, and the installation, uninstallation of dependencies causes issues. The basic fix was moving Azure to the end of the installation. And then hopefully after 9.16, we can merge in AJ's changes and then not have to deal with what order things get built. I think we're aiming, so now that we're at the end of the month, I think we're going to be aiming for May. I think it was the second Tuesday or something of May as a release. It's a little behind schedule, but everything's looking good so far. So we should have one in May. And then I think I don't know if we'll do the release live or not. That is an option because I think the community meeting will fall on that day anyway. So
Okay, and if not, we can record it anyway. I want to shove that into the YouTube channel anyway. So yeah. Nice. All right, cool. And so is that the first? So this is the first step. Are you expecting June to be like what's the end state as far as like the automation and stuff? Because I know we were.
Yeah, I would say I don't have a clear answer on like when we'll be able to fully automate it. I think going through this, it's very evident that there is still a lot of manual stuff that I'm not sure exactly how to tackle just yet. I mean, I think certainly like a lot of it can be cleaned up by like basically a shell script that you run locally, but the whole like release engineering PR that has to go up and then some of the weirdness that can come out of there, I'm just a little hesitant on like fully automating that before having a more clear picture on what we should do. Okay, all right. So we'll just make incremental improvements then, and then we'll figure that out. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this specific time around, I was like, wow, there's a lot that can go wrong, even in doing the step before the release. So. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Anything else release related or questions for Sunny? Twice. All right. Any of these PRs jumping out at anybody or any other kind of discussion topics? Yeah, I saw that Todd is on the call. So he opened an issue on using the copy related tag action on non-first class resource types in Custodian. Is that an issue? Sorry, if we can get that number, that'd be fantastic. 7223, I'll pull it in there. 7223 addresses that. The original issue, I think it's not in the. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to make sure we get it on the video. Liz, can you put that one up? Is it in the? Yeah, it's in chat. 7188. 7188, yeah. So for those that are unaware, there's a copy-related tags action, which can basically take the tags from a referenced resource in your resource metadata and copy those tags onto the actual resource. So a common one is like copying tags from like your EBS volume onto your EC2 instance. In this case, what Todd is asking, and since he's on the call, feel free to let me know if I'm misrepresenting this, but not every resource in AWS is supported in Custodian. That may be for a whole host of reasons, but that's just the case, right? However, some of these resources are supported in the resource groups tagging API, where all you have to do is pass in an ARN and you get the tags back. So Liz, if you scroll down a little bit, the policy here, rather than having the resource type be like EC2 or EBS, it would be resource group tagging API, and then the key would be a reference to an ARN that we would look up. So there is a PR open for that right now, which would be 7223. And I guess, Todd, if there's any other discussion that you had around it, I'd love to hear it. And then if anyone else has any thoughts on that, feel free to speak up as well.
No, that's the basic premise behind all of this. I think at previous community meeting, we talked about this kind of briefly. I think I asked the question, and there was discussion on whether or not research groups tagging API would itself be a first-class citizen, because there had been discussion, I guess, around being able to do something as that. I'm not sure the use case around that. I did take a glance at your PR. It seems like it would do what I'm asking, although I wonder if it felt like there was a lot of duplication of code potentially, and like, right, because all of this is basically being implemented strictly for the copy relay resources action, as opposed to a more generic methodology around it. So I don't know if I really care, but I could see some people caring about that. I don't know. That was the only thing that I was going to comment on. But hey, this is the basic idea. Yeah, just being able to reference any ARN that's supported by the resource groups tagging API.
Yeah, then the other change here would be being able to access based off a tag key, because that wasn't available previously in the copy related tag. So
yeah, and that seems quite useful, right? I was actually surprised it wasn't supported, because I would have thought that it would have been basically the same type of references you could give to the value filter, essentially.
Yeah, it's slightly different because this one's just more of a straight James path lookup. But there's some James path like syntax magic that you can do to basically get the same result. Yeah, and that'd be useful for like if you use EKS or maybe batch or ECS or something, like stuff that automatically will tag.
Yeah, like spot fleets, I think, will tag the fleet number with your spot instances and stuff, so you can reference the fleet that it was created from and things like that. Yeah. Auto scaling groups.
Yep. That's all I had on it. I think definitely the repeated code, it is still in the draft. It's still missing tests and stuff, but it works locally for what it's worth. But it works on my machine. It's not the greatest metric. But Todd, let me know if you tried out. Feel free to comment on the PR stuff.
Yeah, I will. I'll take a closer look and actually put some feedback on there as opposed to just glancing at it.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Any other items?
Do you have? I'm muted while I'm trying to share a thing. Yeah, I did have one, and this is for the value type, the CIDR value type. This is kind of reviving a PR. This is what we talked about in the previous meeting, kind of trying to surgically piece together a couple PRs that were open into one.
I see people nodding.
One glorious whole. So hopefully, I think, and there was one what looked like an unresolved comment there from Halbazah about the test coverage, but I think with Caden's documentation and test, pulling those in, I think that addresses any open questions there. So I think there are two things that we need here. One is just anyone involved, anyone who cares, just have a look, see if this surgery was botched or if it actually it does things the way that you would expect. And the other thing is that I think we need to get in touch with Austin to find out, because he had started this work under a Capital One address and is no longer at Capital One, so EasyCLA doesn't know what to do with him.
Man.
So we can, we can rebate, we can update the code, but I would want to talk to him and make sure
we
actually get him on board properly. So I don't know him at all.
Yeah.
If any of you do, I'm happy to reach out to him, but somebody has an existing relationship.
Yeah. I worked with Austin before, so I can reach out.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't want to I saw he's got another address on GitHub, but I want to go rebase his commits and stuff, but I'm not talking to him.
And we're going to sit down with the EasyCLA folks in general at KubeCon to make that process not so awful.
Yeah.
So. Cool. All right.
I would say the one other quick, I need a review. I just wanted to shout out to Sunny for this guy, 7222, and the RDS engine filter. Big thanks, Sunny, for taking a request that was a little bit weird and doing what looks like in retrospect the obvious smart thing. That looks really nice to be able to filter by RDS engine, so we can look for deprecations and things like that. That came out of Jameson's work taking in RDS vulnerability report and turning it into an example policy. And then we had some discussion in Git of like, hey, could we make this a smarter lookup? And then with some discussion and then the PR from Sunny, I think it'll be a good thing.
Yep.
Thanks, Sunny. So thanks. Yep.
Akeem was asking when do we have the next release. We talked about that earlier in the meeting. The pull request you're looking for is 7203. Is that the right one? And we're going to shoot for the second Tuesday of May for .9.16. I hope that answers your question. Yep, and the executive summary on that is we thought it'd be easy to automate, but we're going to make some progress here and keep on churning on that one. All right. Does anybody have any other items they'd like to cover? PRs?
One more OPR that I actually went to look at. Not for me, actually. Kapil started this, but it has things that we really need. I pasted in the chat box there, so if you can pull it up.
You got it, Liz?
That's coming.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so Kapil actually started on this. High level, what this does is when we deploy policies, this will tag the associated resources with the appropriate tags. Right now, I believe it only tags Lambda functions, but things like config rules or CloudWatch event rules, those are not tagged, and we want those to be tagged as well. So this PR really helps us. I believe the last comment from Kapil was, this looks good, but it's not tested, especially on user that has large number of policies.
Yep.
For us here, we have 200 policies. I think that's a good numbers of policy. If you guys want us to be the one to test this, we'll be more than happy to carry out the testing to make sure that this is good. I was hoping to be able to talk to Kapil, but he's not here. But definitely, I want to bring this up to the community too. Maybe George, if you can.
I'll put it up first.
But yeah, on our side, we'll be happy to test this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed this as well. Actually, like I think a few weeks ago as well, that we weren't tagging that. So that would definitely be useful. I don't know, like, are you just not tagging the associated resources at all, or do you have like a separate rule that goes in and tags
we were going with what was recommended before, which is we will have a policy to do the taggings ourselves. But it's hard to roll out those things because we have so many things to tag, and we run into API throttling limits. So we would. I think the correct way is to tag it as we roll out the policy, whatever resources the policy create, it should tag at that time rather than having some policy that go and trying to tag everything.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Agreed.
The list keeps growing, and I'm hoping we're going to get it to shrink, but at least we have it. For that.
AJ has been keeping it down. So thank you, AJ.
Yeah, doing the best we can.
Thank you.
All right. And with that pretty much concludes the agenda. Anyone else want to going once, going twice? If you're going to PyCon, we'll see you there. If you're going to KubeCon, please let us know. Kapil and I will be there for sure. Kapil's still slated to go to KubeCon, but we'll see. I for sure am going, so I'm looking forward to meeting people there and have everyone ask about Kubernetes support. That should be a lot of fun. So with that, thank you, everyone. The notes and everything will be published to the usual places. There might be a 24-hour delay since I am at a sprint, so I'm going to do the best I can to get it out for you. With that, we'll give everyone some time back. Thank you very much. And thanks for your patience, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.